All right, let's get right into the main thing. Bob Iger put out a book, and I'm going to buy the book. I definitely want to. There's a lot of shit that's coming out with this book. But
good timing right before Rise of Skywalker.
What's the main thing? Yeah, no. What's the main thing?
The main thing is that when they purchased Lucasfilm for $4 billion, they also purchased 4 outlines from Lucas that were for Star Wars movies. And when Lucas finally sat down, and he reluctantly was going to be a consultant, when he sat down, George, and this is a quote from the book, George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot. And it dawned on him that they weren't using one of the stories he submitted during the negotiations. Iger wrote, adding, now, in the first meeting with him about the future of Star Wars, George felt betrayed. And while this whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start.
Wait, sorry, just so I'm clear, this is about which movies?
The Star Wars movie. When he sold
Force
them.
Awakens.
He had written a treatment for, I think, 7, 8, and 9.
7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
But he had written 4 treatments for 7, 8, and 9?
I think it's 7, 8, and 9 and Solo.
Oh, and Solo.
I think that's what because he was working on Solo with Kasdan.
Yes, that is also something I heard a long time ago. And the other thing was that I think that inside of this report, Mark Hamill had also said that George said that Luke was supposed to die in Episode 9 after training Leia how to be a Jedi in Lucas's treatment.
But they hadn't taken one of his stories, one of the entire treatments they had tossed?
They didn't use any of it.
They tossed them all.
They didn't use anything. And so this is... I wasn't surprised when I heard this. I thought this was already out there because I had heard this already, and because even when he did that, remember he did that whole interview where he got himself in trouble when he called Disney the white slavers, and then he had to apologize for it.
Yeah,
but
I forgot about that.
Yeah, he was pissed. I mean that showed he was pissed. Everybody knew he was pissed, and he didn't use any of and it was the stuff that he had kind of worked with Arndt, and then they chucked out Arndt's script.
Yeah.
So I think that it was out there already, but hearing it from Bob Iger's mouth, that fact that George felt betrayed.
Do you think that they should have used his treatments?
I've never read the treatments. Do you mean just because for respect-wise?
Yeah.
Not if you're buying it. Like if you're buying it and you said, unless they lied to him. If they lied to him and said, we're going to use this. If they said, yeah, we're buying this because we're planning on using it. We promise you, we give you a word that we're going to use this. Then yes.
They did.
Yeah.
Then
well,
do you think that's what happened?
No, and this is Iger says, we're not obligated to do these, not contractually obligated to use these outlines.
He just felt George Lucas, because of what he's done, rightfully so, probably felt like, for respect of what I'm doing, plus the fact I'm handing over my baby to you, use my fucking treatments. Like I know it, because no one in this room or in general can argue that George Lucas is one of the greatest storytellers of all time. The stuff inside of his stories you can use. You don't have to use his dialogue. You don't have to use.
And he said they scrapped it all. They
didn't use a thing because he told
even
James Cameron.
Solo?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going there. This is what he said to James Cameron.
So I should stop interrupting you and let you tell the story?
Yeah, it could be a
novel
good thing.
concept.
Could be a thing. There's this world of creatures that operates differently than what we do. I call them the wills, and the wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force, and this is the microbiotic world that he wanted to explore in the new in the new trilogy. And that's what he told James Cameron.
It's like they will the universe.
Well, it was the Guardians of the Wills. That's been around for a very long time, and
in the books.
And just concepts of earlier scripts and
Journal
things that
of the
too. Even before Episode 4, it's just this is why I always tell people to read.
I like the sound of that.
Well, but wait,
He's going
he said
midi-chlorians
he
again,
said the
but
same
deeper.
thing. What he said about this is that he's pretty sure that they would have went with a lot of this stuff. The fans would have hated it. But here's why I'll push back on that. I think that anytime you have something from him in story. Whether it's a fucking 2-page paragraph, document or whatever it is, a director and a screenwriter can craft the brilliance of what he does story-wise and turn it into something special. You just can't let him write the scripts, and you can't let him direct. And that's not what he would have done. So, the answer, Roxy, as far as do I think that he should have, could they have used stuff? I mean, if it was... You asked me right now if I would have rather had the original idea of Luke dying in 9 and training Leia. 1,000,000,000%.
Really?
I don't think you should. I know you liked the episode 8 the way that it happened.
Yeah.
I hate the way Luke went out. I hate it because I thought that I probably would have been okay if they would have said.
It's not my favorite part of Episode 8. Just so you know.
But I just didn't think it works at all for what Luke was, and I think that's probably so. Yeah, what I answering your question of whether or not I would have liked to seen some of his other stuff. If that was the case to combat what I saw in 8, then yes. But I don't know what else was in there. Do you? I mean. How about Bob Iger saying this in general, though? You know it's going to open up floodgates.
Yeah, I mean, now people are going to be like, well, if
Right.
Lucas had the story,
Right.
we wouldn't have had Episode 8 and Last Jedi. And the people, because, like, for me, I think Force Awakens is fine. It's just a retread of New Hope, in my
And that's what
opinion.
Lucas said.
And that's
he
what
said
Lucas
in the
said.
when
Nothing new.
So that's what he said in Bob Iger's book. He goes through the screening, and he goes, and he said he wasn't shy. He just says, "There's nothing new."
Yeah.
And he didn't like it.
Do you guys think it's possible? This is a weird question, but I'm going to throw it out there. It's possible that George Lucas dies in however many years, and then 20 years after that, they make the movies from his treatment.
I mean, at that point, it'd be way.
Reboot,
Yeah, I don't know.
new
The
trilogy.
Lucas, it's like the Snyder cut, but
Yeah.
the Lucas
Yeah,
cut.
I don't know.
But not just releasing something that's been shot. Like they make his movies.
You never say no to that because even what I would never want to see redone is episode 4, 5, and 6. People are like, well, could they remake it? They could. Should they not? I mean, look at the backlash when people said, oh, we're going to make Princess Bride. What happened there?
What would you rather, them redo 4, 5, and 6, or them try Lucas's 7, 8, 9?
None of it. None of it. They're already made. So you take elements maybe if you can from 7, 8, and 9. Because maybe you can pull it back and make it a separate story and put it in a Disney Plus series or something if it works. If you can do that, because if
But
it's
I'm talking 50 years from now, when Disney Plus is driving.
right, I don't know. I mean, it's.
I know,
don't know.
I know you don't like hypotheticals.
No.
as
It's
much
not.
as
It's
I
not.
do.
It's not the hypothetical. It's because you're asking 50 years of library stuff that's already going to be in there. That's 50 years of television shows, 50 years of more movies. That if they're just going to go back and make.
Just a standalone.
Yeah. Now we're going to go back to the George Lucas from 50 years ago. And we're going to say the What If series. Basically, is what it is.
Yeah.
What if we would have done George Lucas's instead? Could that happen? Sure. I just
Maybe
don't know.
they'll do the comic books. Because remember they did the
Yeah,
first
maybe.
draft of the Star Wars, and they did the early version
Right.
in a comic, and I loved it. So
Does this make Bob Iger look bad, or does this make George Lucas kind of look petty?
No, I don't think it makes Lucas look petty. I think because Lucas, I think anybody would sympathize with the guy, whether you agree or not. They'd be in the business side of it. You just sold your property for $4 billion. That's on you to decide that you're going to sign that contract. So whatever comes out, if they tell you we're not obligated and you sell it and they don't, it's on you. That's the business side of it, right? The creative side of it is this is the guy who brought us here in the first place. This is the guy he is the creator. He is royalty. So why not listen to him? But you also understand why he would be pissed off because it's creatively you're like think about the respect. Think about the respect of it.
Oh, I get it.
You know that's kind of why.
Oh, I get it.
I get it. I get the like you're showing respect to George Lucas, but isn't there's got to be some voices in the room of like, listen, people panned the effing prequels.
Absolutely.
We don't want to touch George Lucas's
that's what
stuff.
they did. That's
Back
what they did.
in 2013, 2014 when this
People
was
who
all
don't have
going
good
down.
taste.
Yeah. People forget that it's not prequels are in a different place right now.
Yeah.
And the generation that grew up with them is the
Thank
positive.
you.
Well, it's a positive. It's more positive. Plus the fact that, and I'd said it on this show recently, you watch them with different eyes now when you realize it is part of the overall family, right? But when we're talking here in 2012 to 2014, they were not beloved. When you went to
Yes.
Celebration in 2015, there was not a single thing from the prequels. You couldn't walk now you walk around it's everywhere. But it wasn't anywhere. And I remember us making a big thing out of that. Like there was no posters of it, there was no models of it. They didn't show it at all. It was like the stepchild that they didn't want to talk about.
I feel like it
this-
changed when The Last
did.
Jedi came out.
Well, I think before
Really,
that.
because it was Force Awakens, they wanted to stay away from prequels.
Yeah.
Rogue One comes out, there's the great Vader scene, everybody's like, yeah, and everybody's high on these new Star Wars movies. Last Jedi, that's when I started to feel like the prequels
Prequels
started
coming
to come back.
More
And
love towards it?
Yeah, more love because
Yeah.
it really, truly did divide the fans. And so we're looking back on the prequels going, they weren't as bad
Right.
as I remember.
Going back to what we were initially talking about, this happens all of the time, where the person whose brainchild something is no longer gets to work on it. Alan Moore with Watchmen,
Right.
Yeah.
The back and forth on that. So, Josh, your question, does he look like a douche? I don't ever think a creator looks like a douche for wanting to have control over the
I didn't
baby.
say douche. I said a little petty.
Yeah, it looks
Right,
petty.
right. Sorry. Little petty. So for me, that's like, do you look a little douchey? Boston talk. I just think,
Can you do it in the Blake Lively accent?
I don't know how to imitate her Boston
Can
accent.
you hold that for a second? Because I just reminded myself of something. My
Sure.
wife the other day while we were watching. I don't know what it was, but she said, he's like a douche. And my 8-year-old turns over and goes, "What's a douche?"
Well, there
and
it is.
And it's like, come on.
That's
Sadie.
that exact line is in my feature
Oh,
with a 7-year-old girl.
yeah. That's what happened.
Perfect.
Look at that. So you're spying on me.
No, it's not true. So I don't know where
You
I
were
was.
back to Blake Lively's accent.
Yeah, and you said it's.
No.
No, you were saying back to your point about him being me saying he's a douche, kind of thing.
I just don't think that creators ever are. If you want control over your baby,
Right.
that doesn't mean that legally you should get it. But when it comes to the Alan Moores of the world, that sucks.
Yeah, well, this
it
is-
sucks. Or same thing with Sly.
Well,
we talked about it on the show
right.
before. How he doesn't
Well,
have
Rocky for right.
Right,
Well,
like, it
here's,
sucks.
But here's the bigger question, and this is something after you're reading this, right? And this is I open this for the table right now. Do you think Disney overall has dropped the ball with Star Wars? And I don't mean successfully, because we know that both
Billions.
Last Jedi and Force Awakens and Rogue One made a lot of money, but overall, and this does not include
Even
Mandalorian. 'Cause
Solo made some money.
No,
Yeah,
it was an overall
it was bad.
disappointment. when I read
Well,
it.
it did make some money.
They made
That is
some,
accurate.
well, that's accurate, but it was the most disappointing financially this ever. But so, and I'm not including Mandalorian and all the stuff that hasn't come out yet because we haven't been able to see that stuff yet, right? From up until this point, from 2012 until now, do you think that Disney has handled Star Wars well?
Absolutely.
I've been thinking about this a lot on Rule of Two. I think they have dropped the ball.
Besides Rogue One, it's all been okay.
I think they dropped the ball tremendously. I think they have dropped the
And
ball
that comes
tremendously.
with canon and comic books and books. And it comes with, after looking at everything, talking about this over and over and
All
over
of it.
again, the plans for the movies, the directors getting fired, put on.
It's been messy.
It's been pretty messy.
The money that they've made is because the overall brand itself, and I enjoyed Force Awakens very much.
And this is a guy talking, I love The Last Jedi.
But we're talking about the overall managing of it. Disney and Lucasfilm has dropped the ball. They just have. Now that doesn't look. We've talked about it many times before where we thought DC for a long time dropped the ball. They're back on course. And they're moving. They're running with the ball down the field. Right. I think that they can pick the ball up. And maybe they're going to do that with these new shows. Obi-Wan, Mandalorian. That's why I think TV could save Star Wars. I really do.
I don't
Because
think Star Wars needs saving.
you don't think that the fan base right now is at bitter war with each other?
I didn't say that. I
well,
just
that's
don't
what-
think they need saving.
That to me is saving. That means it's. I think that there's more. I think that the fan base being on because before.
You mean in the
That's a
same way that
great
the country needs
conversation, though.
saving?
What's that?
You mean in the same way that the country needs
Yeah,
saving?
but I think this is a little bit more manageable. But yes, but I think that there's because before the Last Jedi, and I remember being on Jedi Council thinking, man, Star Wars is just a different type of franchise. Fans are just on board. Like because DC and Marvel fans would scream at each other. I'm like, not Star Wars fans. And then after that, it's the most toxic out of all of it.
I don't think that has anything to do with Star Wars. I think check yourself before you wreck yourself, fans. Like this is 2019.
Yeah.
there is no fandom that's not going to be divisive anymore.
And you're right, but what I mean though is that whatever it might be, because it was inevitable, is what you're saying, and I agree with you. But it took a long time to get there, but there's just material that set people off. I think that whether it's Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, all these things. Now, I do think that there's also those people, no matter how good material can be down the line, that they're going to hate it until Disney sells it. Right, and then they'll be happy because they just have this thing against Disney. I just don't think right now the films are in par with what Star Wars needs.
But do you think it's even possible to have a Sopranos Breaking Bad today? And what I mean by that is Game of Thrones was that until it was so incredibly divisive this past season that people are like petitioning and whatever.
Right.
Even if Mandalorian is at the quality of a Sopranos or a Breaking Bad or whatever you at home
People are
think is the
destined to be
greatest
disappointed
show,
is what you're saying.
is it gonna is it even gonna be non-divisive, or is half the people gonna hate it regardless?
I think that you're going to have the same audience that you do for Mandalorian that you did for Rebels. And Rebels, for the most part, I mean, there was.
I don't think it's the same audience.
Oh, I do.
You don't. I mean, I think that
Rebels
everybody who
with
watches
like
Rebels,
animated though.
Everybody who watches Rebels will watch Mandalorian, but the amount of people, it's the circle, it's
No.
the
I'm saying-
square and the rectangle.
I'm saying as far as how these are serialized, how they're put together. I don't think that because here's what the Mandalorian has going for it that Force Awakens and Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker don't have the luxury of having. These are characters we don't know.
Yeah.
Now, as long as they don't have inside of this thing that and now the Empire's good. They're all good guys now, and it's not that there can't be like a couple rogue agents, but they're all good guys, and now they do this and they just go against. And Palpatine was actually a pretty nice guy, and they retcon everything. That's gonna piss people off because you have inside of these things. But if these brand new characters that you're following from the beginning that just happen to live in the Star Wars world, that's where I think that you can really start to win over a brand new audience.
So you don't mean the same exact audience as Rebels. You mean the same type of people who are tuning in.
Correct.
Yeah, we did a giveaway for Heroes and Villains on Rule of Two, and it was like, give us an original idea for a streaming service, Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of Ahsokas, there was a lot of Knights of Ren, there was a lot of Snoke, Kylo Ren, Luke, what have you. And one person who won, because we responded so much to it, was original. It was an original idea, but it was the Empire takes over.
Right.
And they're killing the Jedi. They know about Vader. Vader's off doing his thing.
Sith.
After Sith.
Yeah.
And then the Empire, one of the high lieutenants is like trying to fit in the Empire and finds out his daughter has force powers. And he starts to hide her, and he has to use the underworld to get her out.
Yeah, it's
and
really very World War II.
It's fascinating to me. Exactly. And I responded a lot to it because it's new, and we're not reliant on a
but
Yoda
you're
Darth
still in the world, and you're
still in that
relatable.
world. And you know Vader can show
but
up.
that's Mandalorian.
And that is
Mandalorian, because there are
Mandalorian,
things that
exactly.
can happen in Mandalorian. You will get references, you guarantee, because it's Filoni. You're going to get stuff that pops up from Rebels and other things that happens.
You don't think there's going to be non-Star Wars fans that watch Mandalorian?
Of course there will be. Of course.
And you think there are non-Star Wars fans that watch Rebels?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I mean is that the people that were watching it, the reason that they responded to it, right, is because it all seemed, like from the second, it never changed, and you were, because again, brand new characters in what we were just talking about inside of this world that even if you're tuning in for the first time this animated show and you're learning about all the lore through it, you learn from episode 1 and it stays consistent all the way through. There's space whales and all this other shit that people didn't like, and they definitely had their critics. There's no doubt about that. But for from episode 1 until the end, it stayed consistent. And I think that if you can win over an audience, whether it's a new audience, a new Star Wars audience, whatever it is, from episode 1 on, and stay consistent the way through, then you can keep them on and start. I don't know, a new wave in the way people are looking at Star Wars.
So you do think that this is possible that this show is loved by at least 90% of the people?
I think there's also going to be a statement from Star Wars fans that don't love the movies that will love this show even if they don't. Because, I think that's one of the main reasons why. I think because Kathleen Kennedy's really not that involved in the series, even though her name's on it's Lucasfilm. But I think that people are aware of that also. I think that Filoni and Favreau are really running point on this thing, and it's going to be pretty clear. And it's when people will argue back. Well, of course she's involved on it. She's Kathleen Kennedy. No. It is going to be very different to watch what happens. It's going to be very interesting once this happens. Now, that's not the same. When I say that, I'm not talking about making the decisions to bring on people. Of course she is. The Ewan McGregor stuff she has the final word on what gets made. I'm talking about the creative process alone. And this is always my big thing with her. I think she's a phenomenal producer. I think she's a great producer. Hence why these shows are being made, because she had the wherewithal to say, let's do this one, let's go here, let's do that. But she's stepping back creatively on this one. She's stepping back, and I think that that's why you bring in someone a little different. Let her produce.
So when you say Disney has dropped the ball, what do you actually mean?
So dropping the ball, I just think that they haven't.
Who do you actually mean?
I'm talking about both Lucasfilm and whether it's we'll place it on the heads because that's what we got to do. I blame right now Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah.
I think their decisions of what they've made in their strategy has been poor, and I think to talk about that with the films, I think that they should have had a beginning, middle, and end for the trilogy before they just started handing out movies to. So you make your movie, you make your movie,
And
you make your movie.
Should have had one director do
Not
seven,
necessarily.
but communication between the directors for 7, 8, and 9.
Know where you're going from 7, 8, and 9, and they didn't, and they don't. It's like you get this movie, and then you get this movie. Oh
Producers.
wait, you can't do this movie. Can you do this movie? Oh, you can do this movie. Okay, great. Yeah,
That's the producer side of it, where
Right.
you need somebody as well to know the mythology, and that's the Kevin Feige comparison that everybody makes.
That's what I mean. Is that
because he knows everything
Yeah.
about Marvel and
He's
loves
just
it.
and he's a creative
and a
head.
creative
He's a
guy.
creative head.
So he's formulating mythology through directors and hiring
Yes.
them to keep a plan going. And I don't feel like we got that with Kathleen Kennedy.
Remember,
and
she's
Iger.
creative, but in a different way.
Yes.
And like
it's
a
very
story.
producerial to hire
Correct.
these people.
Correct. But and so as far as Iger goes, Iger also made the colossal error and has said as much. And I think Bob Iger is the Hall of Fame goat of executives. But colossal error with the whole Solo thing. And this was a back and forth that Disney and Lucasfilm had. Avengers Infinity War just comes out. I mean, not a month before, and we see what the juggernaut of a movie that was. And then they go, yeah, but now we're going to put Han Solo out in May. What are you doing? You've just planted the Star Wars flag for the last couple of years and shown it's the first movie to ever cross $100 million opening weekend in December, right, with Force Awakens. And they did it again with Rogue One. They plant that flag, and then they did it again with Last Jedi. And then they jump away from it. It gets murdered by its own movie. There's a lot of different elements of why it didn't work. And there were things that sometimes that he didn't put, I think, enough of a stronghold on it. He should have been part of the plan also. And
So you don't think the colossal error was making the movie? You think the colossal error was?
I think the colossal. I think that's part of it. I don't think Solo needed to be made. It was one of those movies that it was in 2012 when they said we're going to be like Obi-Wan was always rumored. There was a Yoda movie that was rumored that I didn't need.
Jabba the Hutt movie.
Yeah, and there was the Solo movie, and I remember saying it back on Far, Far Away. You don't need a Solo movie.
Yeah.
You really don't. And there are other movies, like you just said before, that could be original that we jump into.
That's what I think they need to do. They need to stop relying on. Once we're done with Rise of Skywalker, I think they should, and it looks like they are with Benioff and Weiss, shaking it loose, doing something original.
But anyway, big tangent.